Hey, are you okay? Ambulance. I helped a woman who collapsed on her way home from work. She had been walking unsteadily in front of me for a while, and I thought she looked like she might be in danger. I'm glad I was able to help before she fell to the ground. She said, "Thank you so much. I'd like to properly thank you another day," and left her business card. Later, she invited me to dinner as a thank you, and we chatted for a while. Sometimes, she would look at me wistfully and then look away, making my heart race. Maybe it's because she's around my parents' age or because of her kind and dignified manner, but I felt a bit nostalgic. Thank you again for helping me the other day. This might be sudden, but do you have a girlfriend? If you don't mind, I'd like to introduce you to someone suitable. I was a bit surprised by her sudden offer, but seeing her hopeful gaze, I agreed. Well, I guess I could just meet her. She brightened up and said, "Then, let's meet here again next week," and resumed our meal. Just as she said, the match she proposed was almost too good for me, and I hit it off with the person, feeling truly glad I came. However, this match ended up turning my life upside down. My name is John, and I'm just an ordinary sales representative. Since graduating and starting my job, I've been leading a busy life. I work at a pharmaceutical company, and the development department is always researching new drugs, so there's a lot to learn. As a sales representative for a pharmaceutical company, I'm known as an MR. Since we handle drugs that can also be harmful, I always update my product knowledge and aim to sell correctly. Thinking this way, studying during breaks and after work is essential. I joined a pharmaceutical company because I wanted to help save people's lives. Therefore, I hated doing a half-hearted job and studied thoroughly, researching anything I didn't know right away. I vowed never to sell with incomplete knowledge. Thanks to this, my performance has been great, and I've earned the trust of many doctors who say, "John is sincere and reliable." Being praised like this, I try to stay grounded, reminding myself not to slack off now. The reason I aimed to become an MR was because of my father. I was raised by my father in a single-parent household. He worked and did all the housework perfectly, and I want to be a father like him if I ever get married. However, my father had a chronic illness. It was a mild condition controlled by daily medication, but he always took his medicine secretly, not letting me notice, and loved me dearly. Seeing him like that made me want to work in healthcare. But being from a single-parent household, I didn't have the funds to attend a prestigious medical or pharmaceutical school. Nor was I smart enough to aim for a private university's medical or pharmaceutical department. So, I aimed for the science department at a private university, joined a pharmaceutical-related seminar, and set my sights on a pharmaceutical company. Even if I couldn't be in research, I wanted to deliver ever-evolving medicines to those in need as a sales representative. If possible, I hoped to relay feedback from users to the research department, contributing to the development of more effective and easier-to-take medications. My boss in the sales department is very strict. "John, are you ready for the sales visit?" She is Sarah, a woman who recently transferred from the research department and taught me everything about drugs. "Oh, you're in the sales department, but you study diligently." This was our first conversation on her first day after transferring. I still remember it. And the conversation continued. "John, keep up that studying. It will be your weapon. What is our job as MRs? To sell drugs?" That's half correct, half incorrect. I listened intently to her words. Our job is to deliver the right drugs, with the right knowledge, to the right place. Drugs can become poisons depending on their use. We indirectly hold people's lives in our hands. That's why we must thoroughly master our knowledge and convince the doctors. This was her teaching, which aligned with my own thoughts. The difference was her overwhelming knowledge. She had a background in pharmacy and worked in the development department, sharing her expertise with me. "John, did you go through the materials from the other day?" "Yes, but I have a question about the drug interactions." During our commute in Sarah's car, we reviewed materials and held oral study sessions. This time was very precious and appreciated. Throughout the company, Sarah was known to be quite strict. I often got teased with comments like, "John, how do you manage under such a tough woman? Are you a masochist?" Well, she is strict, but her guidance is spot on. I know I'll be fine if I follow her lead, so I'm sticking with her. She may be tough, and people even call her team the military, but she never says anything unreasonable, always listens until the end, and never abandons her guidance. Although I've never seen her smile, she properly evaluates effort and sets higher goals. There's no doubt that I am where I am today because of Sarah. One day, I was walking home, completely exhausted. I had many hospital visits that day, moving from place to place. By the time I was heading home, it was already past midnight. Studying after getting home today seems impossible. With that in mind, I concentrated more than usual on my materials during the commute and ended up missing my stop. I decided to walk the extra station home, thinking it might be a nice change. The unfamiliar path felt refreshing. I didn't know this street existed. Maybe I'll leave home early, have breakfast at that cafe, and study there, I thought, walking home while daydreaming. Suddenly, I saw a woman walking unsteadily in front of me, looking like she might collapse any second. I thought she looked in danger, but I hesitated to approach her, thinking it might scare her. However, her unsteady steps suddenly halted, and she disappeared from view. Oh no! I threw my bag aside and rushed to her, catching her as she fell. Hey, are you okay? Ambulance! I lightly tapped her shoulder, but she seemed unconscious. I laid her down at the side of the road, using my jacket as a pillow. I took out my phone from the bag I had thrown aside and called an ambulance. Soon, the ambulance arrived, and as I was interacting with the paramedics, the woman suddenly sat up. "Where am I?" she asked, looking around. "Oh, you're awake. You collapsed while walking, so I called an ambulance. You seemed unconscious." "How long was I unconscious?" I briefly explained what had happened. "I see. Thank you so much. The paramedics are here now, so I'll be fine. I'd like to thank you properly, but I don't have anything with me right now. Could I have your business card?" "Oh, no, please don't worry about it. It was nothing." Helping someone is just natural, so her gratitude felt a bit embarrassing. I was about to leave quickly, thinking it was enough that she was okay. "Please, let me thank you," she insisted. "If you insist." "Please don't worry about it," I said, handing her my business card before leaving. Even though I felt I hadn't done much, I thought about how dangerous it could have been for her to collapse alone at night and felt a bit better about myself. That night, I slept very soundly, feeling a sense of accomplishment. "John, can I talk to you for a minute?" The next morning, as I arrived at work, Mr. Smith called me into his office with a serious expression. I wondered if I had done something wrong. Pondering over this, I headed to his office. "John, you've done something incredible." As soon as I entered, Mr. Smith spoke without looking at me. What could I have done? My mind raced until he continued, "Have a seat. It's better than standing and talking." I sat in the plush chair, my heart pounding. "You did a great job, really. A major achievement." At his words, I looked up. In front of me sat Mr. Smith, beaming. I felt relieved. "You helped a woman on your way home yesterday, right?" "That woman is Dr. Thompson, the director of Central Hospital." Mr. Smith, clearly excited about the prospect of securing a major contract, continued. "We received a call from her this morning. She said she was rescued by you and is willing to reconsider the new drug proposal we previously pitched." Apparently, the woman I helped was a significant figure. She is renowned in the medical field, consulted by major figures both domestically and internationally. This new drug pitch is a big one. I want you to handle it. It's a major opportunity, so you can take Sarah with you if necessary. Thanks to you, the company's future looks bright. Even if it's not an immediate contract, build a good relationship." Mr. Smith seemed very pleased. Back in my department, I reported this to Sarah. "I see. You can handle this contract alone, John." "You'll be fine," she said before leaving. So far, for such major contracts, even if I was the lead, she would always accompany me. Could this mean I've finally been acknowledged? Pondering this, I started my work for the day. "Thank you so much for the other day. Are you free next Friday? I'd like to take you out for a meal as a thank you. There's something I'd like to discuss." That same day, I received a call from the female doctor I had helped the previous night. She's really conscientious. Honestly, being thanked so formally felt a bit embarrassing, and I wasn't too enthusiastic, but after Mr. Smith's comments this morning, I couldn't refuse. So, I agreed to meet her for dinner on Friday, hoping to also secure a business opportunity. Great. I'll pick you up on Friday then, she said and hung up the phone. For the dinner, I thought my usual suit wouldn't be appropriate, so I prepared some casual formal clothes. John, got a date tonight? I was teased, but it was better than embarrassing my host. As I left the office, there was a luxury car waiting in front of me. I'd been waiting for you, let's go. Are you okay with seafood? I was thinking of taking you to my favorite French restaurant. She smiled warmly, dressed in what looked like very expensive clothes. I didn't properly introduce myself the other day. Thank you again for your help. My name is Emily Thompson. She handed me her business card as she thanked me again. The card read Emily Thompson, Director of Central Hospital, just as Mr. Smith had mentioned. I got into the car, guided by her, feeling nervous sitting in the back seat with a driver up front. We arrived at an incredibly luxurious French restaurant, and dish after dish was served. Honestly, I was too nervous to fully enjoy the food, but seeing her smile at me from across the table, occasionally looking wistful, made my heart race. Trying to avoid any awkwardness or mistakes, I chatted with her. By the end of the course, I was finally relaxed enough to enjoy the flavors. John, do you have a girlfriend? Dr. Thompson suddenly asked, looking directly at me. No, I don't. Oh, sorry to ask so abruptly. So, you don't have a girlfriend, she said, touching her chin thoughtfully. If you don't mind, I'd like to introduce you to one of my protégés. It should be a good match, even if it doesn't lead to a relationship. Seeing her earnest gaze, I nodded impulsively. On the appointed day, I returned to the same French restaurant. I thought, she must really like this place. I was also excited to try the dishes I had been too nervous to enjoy before. When I mentioned Dr. Thompson's name, I was led to a private room in the back. Oh, I've been expecting you. You're John, right? The gentle voice came from a lovely woman who smiled at me. Nice to meet you. Dr. Thompson set this up for us. I'm Grace. It's a pleasure to meet you. Her graceful gesture of tucking her long hair behind her ear made my heart skip a beat. Nice to meet you, I'm John. Thank you for meeting with me. Despite being our first meeting, the dinner went smoothly. I work under Dr. Thompson as a doctor. As I heard, you're sincere and impressive, she said, smiling softly, making me feel flustered. No, I'm just an ordinary sales representative. It's an honor to meet someone as wonderful as you. I was a bit apprehensive about the introduction, but I'm glad I came. I blurted out a response and immediately hung my head, wondering if I seemed too self-deprecating. She laughed softly, covering her mouth. That's perfectly fine. I've heard about your dedicated work. There's no shame in your profession. Next time, why don't you come and sell your medications to our hospital? I nodded eagerly. Dinner with her was genuinely enjoyable, and I wished the time could last forever. Dr. Thompson has a son she's estranged from. Since you helped her, she's been talking about you and her family more often, Grace said, smiling, but her words gave me pause. She should visit him, I murmured. Grace gave me a troubled look. Yes, I think so too. If they can meet, they should. But Dr. Thompson isn't the type to give up without a reason. So there must be something going on. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to speak ill of someone you respect so much, Grace. Don't worry about it. Anyone would think the same if they didn't know the full story. After that, we continued chatting about various things and ended up agreeing to meet again. Before I knew it, I had fallen for Grace, not just for her charming looks but also for her bright and kind personality. After several dates, we arranged to meet again. But this time, it wasn't Grace waiting for me at the meeting spot, it was Dr. Thompson. Ha! Dr. Thompson, what brings you here? Looking apologetic, she said, I'm sorry, but I really needed to talk to you. Grace agreed to give me some of her time. She'll be here in about 30 minutes, so could we talk for a bit? She then led me into a nearby cafe. After our iced coffees arrived, Dr. Thompson began to speak. My old surname was Taylor. I reverted to my maiden name, Thompson, after the divorce. Do you know how Michael Taylor is doing? She looked at me with a slightly sad expression. Michael Taylor. Could it be that the estranged son Grace mentioned is? Dr. Thompson nodded slightly, leaving me bewildered. Why didn't you come to see us all this time? Why did you leave my father? I had so many questions. Let me explain in order. It was my fault. I neglected you all because I was too absorbed in my work. I heard you chose to work for a pharmaceutical company after seeing Michael's chronic illness up close. It's a noble dream to save lives. But family comes first. Cherish them. She took a sip of her coffee. I worked hard to save others, but in doing so, I neglected my family. Michael couldn't bear it anymore and handed me divorce petition, saying, "How can a mother who doesn't even care about her own child's growth save anyone?" That was a wake-up call for me. I realized that while I had saved many lives, I had missed what was most important. She stirred her straw, looking very sad. Maybe the wistful look she had during our first meal together was because she was remembering the divorce. Why didn't you come to see me? You could have at least done that. I was about to say that much should have been possible, considering she talked about her son to Grace, but I stopped myself. Dr. Thompson shook her head weakly, filled with regret and sorrow. Michael didn't forgive me. So, at first, I thought I'd keep my identity as your mother a secret. Seeing her weak smile, I didn't know what to say. I'm glad we met, Mom. Hearing me call her Mom, she shed a single tear. And I think Dad will forgive you too, if you talk it out. You've introduced me to a wonderful person, and I'm satisfied seeing your face again. Let's go to that French restaurant again. I was so nervous the first time that I couldn't taste the food. Turning away in embarrassment, my mom laughed. Oh my, you say the same thing as Michael. All right, we'll go again. And it seems you really like Grace. It was a good match, wasn't it? I looked straight at her and nodded. It's a promise, this time with Dad. Grace is amazing. She's such a pure-hearted woman. I want to protect her with everything I have. John. I heard Grace's voice behind me. She must have arrived and heard everything I said about her. Feeling suddenly embarrassed and blushing, Dr. Thompson laughed. Take care of my child. I've raised her like my own daughter. Grace, blushing, looked down. Dr. Thompson stood up and said as she was leaving. Oh, and your boss, Sarah. She's quite strict, isn't she? She's my best friend. I looked up in surprise. What? Sarah. I must have looked very shocked, and my mom laughed softly. Since I couldn't see you, Sarah was keeping an eye on you. I've always heard about your hard work from her. I'm proud of you. I should thank Sarah for switching from research to sales at my request. As I stood there in a daze, Grace's voice brought me back to reality. I feel like I've just heard something incredible. Smiling, she called over a waiter and ordered tea and a refill of my coffee. So, where should we go today? Her innocent excitement about our date made my heart warm, and I decided to address everything later. I focused on her for now. So, you heard everything, huh? Later, during a break between sales calls, I told Sarah about the conversation I had with my mother. So, I guess my job here is done. John, you've really done well. Do you remember what I told you when we first met? I nodded. An MR indirectly holds people's lives in their hands. I fully agreed with that sentiment and had joined the pharmaceutical company with the hope of saving lives indirectly. You really take after Emily. Why didn't you become a doctor? Sarah laughed heartily, and I was taken aback. It was the first time I had seen her smile. So, you do smile, Sarah. Of course, I'm human. Once Emily asked me to look after you, I made it my mission to get you ready for the world. She said, puffing on a cigarette. I'm transferring back to the research department in the next rotation. You're more than capable of handling things on your own now. If you need anything, just drop by the research department. Thank you for everything. She then shared some memories with me. Emily is pretty awkward, you know. She couldn't balance work and family, so Michael left her. My parents and Sarah were college classmates. Michael is stubborn too. He knew Emily couldn't balance everything. Even now, both Emily and Michael keep in touch with me. They both care about you a lot. Apparently, my father had also been checking up on me through Sarah. When I teasingly told Michael that you work as well as Emily does, he made a complicated face. He still loves Emily. He can't forgive himself for not forgiving her for neglecting the family. She extinguished her cigarette, waved, and walked away. A few years later, my parents had remarried. After my talk with Sarah, I went straight home and told my father about my mother. Dad, let's go to Mom's favorite French restaurant together. She's been thinking about you. And she cares so much about me that she even got her best friend to be my direct supervisor. I persuaded my father, and we finally arranged a meal for the three of us. At first, my parents were awkward with each other, but eventually, their arguments turned into reconciliation. Since then, we started having family meals once a month, and my parents even began going out together more frequently. John, I'm thinking of getting remarried. One day, my father suddenly announced, causing me to spit out my tea. What's this about? With whom? Who else? With Emily. They had rekindled their feelings for each other after several dates. Decades later, they got remarried. And soon, I too would become a father. Grace, it's almost time. How are you feeling? You're such a worrier. Do I look unwell? Grace and I had gotten married, and we were expecting our first child. Since Grace, being a doctor, couldn't take much time off, I planned to take paternity leave. My career had been going well, especially after securing a major contract with Central Hospital through my mother's connections. I had more flexibility with my schedule and spent most of my time training new recruits. With the baby on the way, I was fully prepared to support Grace. While I was at my parents' house learning about parenting from my father, he told me about their remarriage. And I couldn't take in any more information. Oh, you're doing great. You're going to be a wonderful dad, John. Really? Maybe he takes after Michael? Grace will be relieved. While I was training to be a father, my mother and Sarah walked in, Sarah holding her grandchild. Since my parents had reconciled, we had become close with Sarah's family as well. Today, she brought her grandchild over. Grace will be here soon. Could you help prepare dinner? My mother said, placing a load of groceries in the kitchen. My father and I exchanged glances. My mother couldn't cook at all. Seeing the groceries she bought, we both sighed. Hey, how many people are these groceries for? For us, Sarah's family, Grace, about 10 people? My father sighed at my mother's innocent smile. She's so cute, but really, she can only work, nothing else. Following my father's lead, I started prepping the ingredients as he instructed. As we busily worked on the various dishes, the doorbell rang. Grace, welcome home. Just sit down and relax. Oh, let me help with something. It's fine, it's fine. The men in this house are very capable. Pregnant women should sit and rest. My mother, already sipping on a drink, encouraged her to sit down. Oh, my family will be here soon too. Sarah said, leisurely playing with her grandchild. Knowing the real party was about to start, my father and I refocused on finishing the meal preparations. When the doorbell rang again, Grace answered it. The party began. Seeing everyone's smiles made me grin from ear to ear. John, you did great. Let's make our home just as joyful, Grace said, handing me a cold beer with a smile. Looking at her, I made a promise. We will definitely have a happy home.